Hi there, welcome to the full moon in Gemini rising sign horoscopes. First of all, we're going to start with the general forecast and then get into each of the rising signs so you know exactly what to expect on December 15th, 2024. One quick announcement before we get into it. There are still 3 spots left for the year ahead readings. So if you would like a discounted price, a moment to sit down with me and have a chat about the year ahead, make sure you check out the link down below. I'll leave it in the comments as well as in the description box. During full moons, we see our choices that we have made previously come back to show us certain results, come back to show us certain consequences. And this is, of course, exactly what you can expect for this full moon as well. Specifically, the full moon on December 15th is a full moon in Gemini. Therefore, you will start to reap the consequences or start to see manifestations of your previous actions, especially when it comes to any choices that you have made to seek novelty, to seek newness, to seek new experiences, and to seek things that stimulate you and excite you. So it could be during this moon that you are also especially feeling those energies. You're especially feeling curious, a little bit restless. And honestly, because this is during a time that's quite busy for a lot of people, you might especially feel that impact on your nervous system. The sign of Gemini can be very outgoing, can be very out there, trying 1,000 things at one time. But that can mean that we are quite a lot in our minds, in our head, in our thoughts. And as a result, that also makes us feel a little bit unstable, a little bit like our nervous system is a bit on edge, maybe even a little bit jittery as well. And this is especially true because this full moon is also a fast moon. The moon will be moving faster than usual, which means that we might be especially quick to jump to conclusions, quick to say yes, quick to make decisions. And I just want to share one piece of advice, which is to try and return to your practices that ground you and to try to also take care of yourself amidst all of this chaos, amidst all of the thoughts that will be happening, all of the new experiences you might be coming across, so that you can manage your emotional levels, your energy levels a little bit better. And finally, we have a little bit of this Uranian energy during this full moon because of 2 reasons. The moon will be out of bounds on December 15th, but also because the moon will be in the decan ruled by Uranus. The out of bounds moon is usually has the qualities of Uranus anyways, because it can very much showcase this part of us that doesn't like to stick to social constructs, likes to do things a little bit differently. Therefore, if we're to put all of this together, I would say that during this full moon, you might find that you need to step out of the social mold. You need to do things a little bit differently than how everybody else is doing it in order to deal with all of the impacts of your busy life, all of the impacts of your busy mind, and to be able to handle all of that impact that it has on your nervous system as well. Now that we have the general forecast out of the way though, let's jump into the rising signs and we'll get a little bit more specifically into what area of your life this chaos, all of this mind energy, maybe this impact on your nervous system, what area all of that is manifesting in or where it's coming from. First up, we have Aries rising. And for Aries rising or for Aries sun signs, this full moon will be taking place in your third house of communication. During this full moon, you will reap the results of any actions you have taken when it comes to your communication. Especially because this is a full moon in Gemini, you might find that perhaps the way that you have said too much, communicated too much, perhaps literally said yes to too many things is coming back to you now, and it's having some effect on you, whether positive or something a little bit more challenging. Have you perhaps been spreading yourself too thin, perhaps bringing a lot of chaos and a lot of unclarity when it comes to the way you communicate? And you might see on this day that the consequences of that. You might feel like it especially has an impact on your nervous system, or that you might find that people around you are just not able to understand you, and there's maybe some miscommunication happening there. And especially with this house, you might have to take a look at the consequences of you not standing up for what you believe in. Have you spread yourself too thin? Have you maybe told certain people, well, yes, I also believe in this theory and this theory and this lifestyle and this lifestyle, and then finding yourself around this full moon that maybe you actually need to make a choice, that maybe actually you need to dig deep into what it is that you want, and not be afraid if your answer means you need to step out of the social constraints, the expectations that society has for you. Next up, we have Taurus rising and Taurus sun signs. For Taurus, the full moon on December 15th will be taking place in your second house. So this means that you are facing an inescapable, inevitable situation when it comes to your finances. Again, because this is a full moon in Gemini, it could be the consequences of you spreading yourself too thin when it comes to your finances. Perhaps you are trying to do too many things with your money, and you might be seeing results from that, whether positive or more challenging. Have you perhaps been seeking too much novelty, too much newness when it comes to the way you manage your money? Again, you will start to see the results of that during this full moon. Let's have a chat about Gemini rising and Gemini sun signs. For Geminis, this full moon is taking place in the first house of identity. So as a Gemini, you might find that this full moon is especially important for you, and you might be coming across any situation that is a result of actions you have taken previously. Those actions could be anything where you've been, in a sense, trying too many identities, trying to be too many things that you're not, trying to represent yourself to the rest of the world in ways that maybe you were curious about, ways that you were exploring. But you might find that this exploration has certain consequences, and those consequences will become apparent during this full moon. Be especially careful on the effect this has on your nervous system. Make sure that you do your practices to help you stay grounded. And at the end of the day, sort of the anecdote for Gemini is the opposite archetype, which is Sagittarius. So if anything and you need extra support, draw back to yourself, remove yourself from the situation, and just take a moment to reflect, to process the chaos, process the million things going on right now, and to return to, okay, what is the one thing I know is my truth that I can continue with from here on? Next up, we have Cancer rising or Cancer sun signs. And for Cancers, this full moon is taking place in the 12th house. During this full moon, you will see some manifestations based on any spiritual decisions you've made in the past. And specifically, if you have been holding on to things just because of the novelty or newness, If you have been trying too many spiritual practices and been getting too chaotic with all of these things that you're trying out, you will start to see some results of that. You might find that this has an impact on your nervous system, and you might feel like there's just this feeling of chaos when it comes to your spirituality. You might feel like there's a certain chaos of you're holding on to things that just you don't need anymore, and that takes up a lot of mental space for you. That takes up a lot of mental energy from you as well. Next up, we have Leo rising and Leo sun signs. And for Leos, the 11th house will be impacted during the full moon on December 15th. The 11th house means that you will see some inevitable situations, inescapable situations with your friends, with the groups of community that you belong to. Specifically, you might find yourself reaping the results, reaping the fruits of any friendships that you're still in, or any groups that you still belong to that maybe don't fit anymore, but maybe you were just there for the novelty or the newness, the curiosity. And you might find during this full moon that there's just a feeling of being overwhelmed, feeling like that part of your area is just maybe too chaotic. You might find that maybe certain friends or groups have a really big impact on your nervous system, and perhaps confuse you when it comes to also your future goals. Perhaps certain communities that you belong to are not helping you with finding one true direction, future vision, goals that you're working towards, and that perhaps you are spreading yourself too thin, both in terms of who you hang out with, but maybe also spreading yourself too thin in terms of how many goals you want to accomplish in your life as well. Let's have a chat about Virgo sun signs and Virgo rising signs and their 10th house. The full moon on December 15th will most likely show you that you are trying to do a billion different things with your career, and that perhaps you could scale down a bit. Honestly, you might see this manifest in an effect on your nervous system, in an effect on your mind, just feeling like you're too overwhelmed. You can't keep track of all of the things that you have going on. And you might find yourself certain things manifesting that show you need to narrow down. You need to, while curiosity is really fun, and I don't want to discourage anybody from continuing to be curious. However, this full moon might really ask you, okay, curiosity has been fun. Let's, at least for a season of our life, just pick 1, 2, 3 things and focus. And you might find that with that focus, you start to see better progress and better movement when it comes to your career. Next up, we have Libra risings and Libra sun signs. For Libras, the full moon on December 15th is taking place in their 9th house of long distance travel, education, and the legal system. You might be asking yourself questions such as, am I studying something just because I am curious about it, but it's not actually aligned with the future goal of where I want to get myself, or is not actually aligned with my values of what I believe in? You might find during this full moon that any actions you have taken where you've been just trying too many things, spreading yourself too thin, maybe you've been doing too much travel, you will start to see the effects of that. You might find that these things are having an effect on your nervous system, or maybe even creating a really chaotic mind for you. And remember, when we did the general forecast, we talked about the Uranian energy of this full moon. So what I would recommend is not to be afraid to take a look at how you want to cut down and focus, and not be afraid if that focus is a little bit outside of society's expectations, a little bit outside of society's standards as well. Next up, we have Scorpio risings and Scorpio sun signs. The full moon in Gemini for Scorpios is taking place in the 8th house. So on December 15th, Scorpios might find themselves reaping what they sowed when it comes to vulnerability and intimacy. And for Scorpios, this is quite interesting because the full moon in Gemini is quite mind-oriented, but it's in a very much emotional house. So what you might find is all of the ways that you have acted more from your mind, more from your intellect, and not with your heart and your emotions, you might start to see some of that friction come up. It's important that we approach intimacy and vulnerability with our emotions, of course. You might find that the novelty seeking of the archetype of Gemini, of being curious about different things, exploring a lot of things during this full moon, maybe feels a little bit too stressful, too chaotic. It might feel like it's wreaking havoc on your nervous system and maybe crowding your mind as well. And because this is very much a relational house, you might find that this has an impact on your relationship, how you can be intimate and vulnerable with your partner. Let's have a chat about Sagittarius risings and Sagittarius sun signs and their 7th house, because this full moon on December 15th is taking place there in your relationship house. You will be reaping what you sowed when it comes to your relationships. And specifically, you will be seeing all of the ways that you're seeking novelty, you're seeking newness, you're being curious in your relationships. But perhaps that has meant that you haven't had enough stability, enough time to actually establish a deeper level of trust and comfort and knowing with this other person. You might find that the chaos that has been in your relationship, and I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way, but in general, all of the things that have been happening with your relationship, perhaps the different activities you and your partner have been busy with, you might find that this is having an effect on you during this full moon. You might find that it feels quite heavy on your mind, very chaotic in your mind. You might even feel like it has an impact on your nervous system as well. For Capricorn risings and Capricorn sun signs, the full moon in Gemini takes place in their 6th house. You will be experiencing an inevitable situation when it comes to your health and your routine. This means that if you have been spreading yourself too thin, if you have been trying out different diets, if you have actually changed your routine every day, not stuck long enough with one to actually see if it makes a difference, to actually see if it's something you like and want to continue with, you will start to see the results of that. And you might find yourself feeling especially chaotic around these topics during the full moon. You might feel like there's just too much information out there, too much to keep up with. And while you are usually curious and you usually like to explore, on this full moon, it might feel like there's something that happens that forces you to sort of withdraw, go a little bit more into that opposite energy of Gemini, which is the archetype of Sagittarius. Go a little bit more into that energy of withdrawing from the situation, processing everything that you have heard about your health and diet and routine, and start to make selections, start to make choices and opinions about what you want to try, or what is your truth, and which ones you want to let fall away. For Aquarius risings and Aquarius sun signs, the full moon in Gemini takes place in their 5th house. The 5th house is the house of self-expression, creativity, even romantic relationships. And it's actually quite interesting because this is a house that's ruled by Leo. It's very much heart-centered house. But we have the archetype of Gemini, which is very much mind-oriented with this full moon. So what you might find is that if there are any places where you've been trying to be self-expressive, trying to be, expressing your inner child, but doing it too much from your intellect and not enough from your heart and your emotions, you might start to see some results, some manifestations come from that. You could also see that with your romantic relationships as well. Perhaps you've been indulging a little bit too much. You've been quite chaotic, exploring and dating a lot. And again, I don't want to deter anybody from dating a lot because that can also be fun. But during this full moon, you might feel like you need to take a step back, at least for a little bit, because you might feel those effects of things are just too chaotic, there's too much going on, you're spreading yourself too thin. While all of the dating is a lot of fun and really exciting, you might start to see that in certain ways, all of that novelty is holding you back. Perhaps it's holding you back from picking one and pursuing a deeper connection. But of course, there could be other ways that you find it's holding you back. It could also just be that it feels like it's keeping your mind too busy, trying to keep up with all of the different dates and all of the different people you're meeting. Or it could also be that you find it's just very hard on your nervous system, always meeting new people and needing to sort of put your best foot forward. And you might find that what your body really needs at this time is to pick a couple people and pursue a more deeper, intimate relationship with them so that your nervous system can feel a little bit more calm because they're in the presence of people that they know and trust. And finally, for Pisces rising and Pisces sun signs, we are talking about the 4th house. You might find, especially with this full moon on December 15th, that your home and family life feels very chaotic. Whatever is happening there, you might see the effects on your mind. Your mind might feel busy, very chaotic. And you might also feel the effects on your nervous system. Your nervous system might feel like you need to remove yourself and just take a moment to process all of the chaos. And you might also find that any choices you have made in the past where you were seeking a lot of new things with your home, perhaps you've started doing 5 renovations at the same time, or maybe you have tried to touch base with 5 different relatives and maintain relationships with all of them, you will start to see those effects come about. The 4th house is a very relational house. It's very much a house, an emotional house. So it might feel a bit weird during this full moon in Gemini because you might feel like your mind is front and center. But you might find what really helps is to allow yourself to drop into your heart, even though it might feel very, very unnatural during this full moon. So that's it. Those are all of the rising sign horoscopes. I hope you enjoyed them and I hope they help give you some guidance for this full moon. Don't forget that I also posted a full moon guided meditation that you can watch right here. And also, if you'd like to have a 2025 year ahead reading, make sure you grab a spot. The link is down below in the comments and in the description box. Thanks again, and I hope to see you again soon.